Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this FIPRA briefing on the Americas. We have a great lineup for you this afternoon, and we're hoping it will be a good interactive conversation. So we look forward to informing you about the latest that's happening across Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, the US, and Canada. With that, I want to just introduce our panelists, Jose Gabriel Asista Almeida, joining us from Brazil, Miguel Angel Martinez from Argentina, Nicola Montosi, a founder of Power On in Colombia, Juan Mauricio Mora from Mexico, and Instraj, yes. And then, of course, the lovely Keenan Austin Reed joining us as the VP of the Alpine Group in the US. We're going to do a quick setup on this call, and each of us are going to just maybe talk quickly. Each of our speakers are going to talk quickly about what's happening in their own jurisdiction. And then we're going to tie it together with a couple of overriding themes around trade and COP26 and climate change, etc. I think you'll find the briefing very interesting. We're all independent public affairs providers in our own jurisdictions. We work hard, we listen well to what's happening on the ground. So I think you'll find this a very interesting conversation. Jose Gabriel, I'm going to start with you. If you could just kick us off, please, with the perspective from Brazil.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you all for the attendance. Just a quick words about Brazil continuing to be a world of opportunities. And post-pandemic Brazil's economic fundamentals remain strong. We have a 5.3% increase in the GPD, gross domestic product, for 2021, and a projected 2.5% for 2022. Inflation is at 3.7% in 2022. Private investment had an increase by 11% in the last 12 months. The public deficit is now at 2.2% of the GPD for 2021, which is far better than the 8.4% in France or the 14% in the UK. And as you may know, the public deficit has always been a difficult issue in Brazil. And growth in general is expected in all major sectors, such as agri-food industry, commodities, renewable energies, IT, tech, infrastructure, and some new opportunities as forest conservation and circular economy. So what I'm telling you is different Brazil from the one that is on the news around the world. Why? The reason is very simple. As a matter of fact, there is not one Brazil, but there are several Brazils. Brazil is in Sao Paulo is not the same as the Brazil in Brasilia, the capital. Brazil in Mato Grosso, where are the big soya producers, is not the same Brazil in Rio Grande do Sul, where there is a very active metal industry. And so what the purpose of my intervention today is to help you to understand these several Brazils. And let's start, I'd like to start with an issue that usually hurts and that has given Brazil a very bad press international. And where, unfortunately, there is a lot of demagogy from all sides and parties involved, and it is about, of course, environment. And environment, it's very important. We have been now discussing the COP26. Brazil has been present and has agreed with the final declaration. And as it's easy to understand, environment is a key issue in Brazil. One point that all Brazilian political actors have in common, from former President Lula to current President Bolsonaro, is that the Amazon region is somehow untouchable. And Brazil will take every political measure possible to ascertain its sovereignty over the Amazon region and its natural and economic resources. However, in this sector, there are huge opportunities, and one of them is, of course, the carbon market Brazil is organizing. There are currently two bills at the Brazilian Congress that are expected to be approved by the end of this year or early next year, uh, organizing the carbon markets in Brazil. One of them, Bill 528 from 21, establishes the Brazilian Emissions Reduction Market, the MBRE, that regulates the transactions of carbon credits. And the proposal offers for the development of a voluntary market for carbon credits to serve companies or governments to offset the environmental impact of their activities. And it is, of course, a huge possibility for Brazil because Brazil has a huge extension and lots of green areas. On the other side, I would like also to point out that in December 2019, the National Biofuels Policy was officially launched to expand the use of biofuels in Brazil national energy metrics. And in 2020, the Environmental Ministry launched the Forest Plus and the Forest Plus Carbon Program, which provided for the generation of carbon credits through the conservation and recovery of native vegetation of Brazilian biomes as an alternative of additional income for forest protection practices. And recently, at the beginning of this year, in January 2021, under law 14119, the Brazilian government established the National Policy for Payments for Environmental Services, the PNPSA, the National Registry for Payment for Environmental Services, and the Federal Program for Payment for Environmental Services. And this opens huge opportunities for carbon credits generation in productive sectors, such as, for example, agricultural, energy, transportation, and several others in Brazil. And I'd like to give you some final figures that I think give a clear image of what is the potential of this opportunity in Brazil. Brazil's current supply share in the voluntary market, VCS, is at 3.6%. In the coming years, the corresponding share of about 10% is envisaged, since countries that traded higher percentage than Brazil in 2019, especially India, had projects linked to the renewable energy sector that are no longer allowed in the new project registrations in the VCS standard since January 2020. So for 2030, the Task Force on Scaling Voluntary Carbon Markets estimates an annual potential of an average of 10,000 million tons for credit generation, although it points out that a supply of an average 3,000 tons will be more likely due to barriers and complexity and rate needed to scale up projects, geographical complexity, risks, and lack of financial attractiveness. Based on this data, it was estimated the potential, Brazil has estimated the potential for offering credits. The agriculture and forest sector were prioritized for their emission mitigation measures to present higher reduction potentials and better cost effectiveness ratios. And the energy sector that has a mitigation potential mapped to Brazil that contains technological innovation is also one of these important projects. Thus, it is possible to consider two following scenarios for these Brazilian productive sectors. The most conservative possibility, Brazil continuing to represent 3.6 of a 3 million ton market in 2030, and with an average price from 2009 to 2080, would have the potential to generate about 493 million from the total credit sales in the country. And in an optimistic scenario, Brazil representing 10% of the 10 million tons market in 2030, then the carbon credits sold could generate up to $100 billion in 2030. So this is important to show how we have this situation in Brazil and how this is a huge market that can offer much opportunities to foreigners and foreign investment in Brazil. And I will later on be able to develop more if the occasion raises. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That is certainly not the Brazil we hear about, and there's so much detail on the carbon market piece. So, thank you for that. And Article 6 at the COP negotiations would have been very important.
For sure.
Miguel, as co founder and CEO of Infomedia, can you tell us what's happening on the ground in Argentina?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Belma. Good morning or good evening, according to the time each one is in. I am a senior partner of Infomedia, which is a public affairs consultancy firm, member of FIPRA in Argentina. I am very happy to introduce a scenario of potential business opportunities after the challenge of the COVID pandemic and in our case, the recent midterm elections that result in a defeat of the official political coalition 3 days ago, last Sunday. Just a comment, an article from McKinsey, the consultancy firm McKinsey, estimated how much value is at stake when a company mismanages the government intervention in the economy of a specific business. In average, the profit loss represents a 30% of revenues. That means a lot of money. So the impact of the government intervention is even higher in countries like Argentina, where with middle and low income, where economic freedom is even less, and the rule of law is either not as robust as it is in more developed countries. So, a case of Argentina is a very rich country in terms of natural resources. We are plenty of agriculture, cattle raising, mining, oil and gas, lithium, but at the same time, we are high risk in terms of political risk. Our bureaucracy and administrative structure is highly dependent on political definitions. In this sense, we, Infomedia FIPRA, as a firm that provides professional services of public affairs management, found an opportunity in operating with professional and ethical standards. This management of relationships and access to information through methodologies, planning, and execution following rules of compliance. Among, as we said, Argentina presents, an array of characteristics that adapt to the current thirst for energy, food, and minerals that it seems the world is needing. We have, in first place, Vaca Muerta, that is considered a world class basin in oil and gas reserves. Also, in nuclear energy, Argentina is a world leader in low and medium power segment. In renewable energies, the key energy for the 21st century, Argentina presents ideal geographical conditions for sun, aeolic, and hydrogen projects. Also, Argentina is a key player historically in the agriculture and livestock markets, famous for its quality meat and a top three player in the corn and soybean industries. Also, the country is a world leader in the production of flour and oil from soybean and corn. In the mining sector, the country has still the 70% of potential subsoil without being yet analyzed, and it's considered to have world-class opportunities in silver and copper. On lithium, the key mineral for the transition to a more energy efficient world, Argentina is part of the triangle of lithium with Bolivia and Chile, where about 70% of the world's lithium is located. Although we are focusing on these main areas, energy, food, mining, Argentina also has excellent opportunities in the wine industry with its famous Malbec and olives and tourism. At the same time, Argentina is a political and bureaucratic complicated network that it's not easy to navigate. We are a federal government and 24 provincial governments and more than 1,300 municipalities. We are a federal and democratic republic. All over the country, there are five national media companies, and above that, each province, these 24 provinces, each one of them has one or two agenda setting local media groups as well. Also, unions are powerful and influential players in all industries. The current political context, actually, the government is led by, since December 2019, by a coalition that it's called its name Frente de Todos, that won the elections in October of 2019, and it's an electoral alliance within different sectors from the Justicialist Party, known as the Peronist Party. The coalition actually is integrated by a number of actors that represent different variant populist ideas. The former presidency of Mauricio Macri ended in December 2019 with the country in recession and heavily indebted. On top of that, in March 2020, just a few months after the new administration took office, the COVID pandemic started. Last Sunday, we had midterm legislative elections that were a shock for the government. The opposition, Juntos por el Cambio, won the election with a difference of 9% of the votes at the national level. At the same time, the Peronists lost for the first time since democracy reestablished in 1983 the control of the Senate chamber at the National Congress. A key explanation for this electoral defeat was the bureaucratic incapacity to manage the administration. Between other reasons, a weak president whose incapacity to take decisions impact in public policy resolution. Actual President Alberto Fernandez was the formal head of the administration, but simultaneously, Vice President Cristina Kirchner remained as the political chief of the government. This sort of two heads governing was a mess that causes this sort of mismanagement. The construction of public policy requires a political process before administrative decisions are taken. And this process is hard to understand within this administration, where political fragmentation have been the rule. I think that firms like the ones we run can help companies in their relationships with government in issues that become complicated because they cannot be faced only through traditional management or legal approach from a law firm. It is necessary to work in designing a political decision path in each case, and that is particularly hard to reach in coalition governments. This logic is well understood by professional lobbying firms with history in working with multinational companies, as I mentioned, with ethical compliance standards. We used to say FCPA bulletproof, all of which is not easy to find in a country as Argentina. We will be pleased to get acquainted with any problem that somebody can raise and put the best of our professional skills in trying to help you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You certainly did a great job of laying out the complexity there on the ground, both political and policy. So thank you for that. And it's good that you're there with your ears so close to the ground. Nicola, if you could please talk to us about Colombia.
Yes, thank you, Velma, and I'll try to be brief because It's going to be very long to describe the full complexity of this country. This is a medium-sized country, but it's very rich. We are between the Pacific and the Atlantic, so we hold the two seas. We have three mountain chains. We have every sort of raw materials and resources. We sit on the north side of the Amazon, for example, but also we are a very complex society. We've celebrated more than 200 years from the independence to the Spanish colony, but we are suffering of over 50 years of internal conflict with the guerrillas. And we actually signed a peace treaty in 2015 that still is in the making, let's say. So COVID didn't help, of course. Like everywhere else, we had more than 5 million people infected, over 130,000 fatalities. We are at a rate at 45% of vaccinated, so still a bit behind with respect of the north of the world, but we are getting there. So we are just back to the point where we are having 500 deaths per day to 50 deaths per day, which is the descendant curve, which is the good news that Europe got some 6 months ago. So we are a bit behind, but we are getting there. We have very big expectations on the post-COVID uh, uh, relaunch. We got into COVID in the middle of a big strike with national strike and street turmoil because the government they were proposing a regressive tax reform. This cost more than 6.8% of GDP, the strikes, and then COVID kicked in. So now we are back to the recovery. We are back to plus 5% GDP, but still there's a long way to go on that. What I wanted to land here is one piece of the takeaways that we return from COP26 is the technology part, because the agenda on conservation, biodiversity, so on and so forth with the UN is very well advanced here. The new challenge is technology, because we have the potential, and also it can be a very good social equalizer, because also Colombia has this other Guinness, World Guinness, is the most unequal economy in the American region. So 10% of the population has more than half of the GDP in their hands, and more than 40% of the people are below the poverty line. 10% are not even registered at born. So indigenous people, we have, also the society is pretty complex in the 32 regions of the country. Technology can be a very good social equalizer, because you need very few infrastructure and great ideas to do it. And of course, Colombian people are very smart. They don't miss great and clever ideas. And right before COVID, the World Economic Forum, they launched the center of the fourth revolution in the country, in the city of Medellin. These are only 5 centers around the world where they want to concentrate excellence in technology. Today, for example, Microsoft is the one that is doing the training for the software development. So they want to make the Valley of Medellin a new software valley. They don't call it Silicon Valley, but they want to specialize in software. And also they have the city has a innovation agency called Ruta N that is from the city but is independent, so it can give a very good bridge both to large multinationals to come here and do investments, but also to individuals to have visibility to a project or to make an idea come true. So that's very important, because we are here as an advisor to take the companies on the hands through that, in the way that assuring that they are successful. And actually, we just opened up a stable unit in the capital, Bogota, with a new partner called Prospectiva. So the formal announcement is coming in the next few days, but we are going to have a very larger and stronger presence here in the country. So the invitation, of course, is coming here. It's a very friendly business environment. We have all the uh, trade agreement with the EU, with the US, EFTA, CAN, Andean Community, and so on. We are very friendly on that. We are very up to the level of standards with the US and the EU. And it's a great place that you will find yourself in a great business environment in the middle of a region, because we are right in the center of the American region. Close to the south of the United States and with direct connections to Europe. So that was my overview, Velma, and I'm very happy to answer a question later on.
Thank you so much, and thank you to our listeners, because we're kind of going around the horn here. So now we're going to turn to what's happening in Mexico, but it's a very fortuitous. We didn't know when we scheduled this session that our leaders, Mexico, the US, and Canada, were going to meet this week. So, Juan, I turn it to you to talk to us about Mexico, and maybe if you could give a little bit of context on the Leaders Summit, your perspective.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be here. Thank you to our viewers. First of all, and you didn't mention this, but we had the soccer games this week. We lost to both the US and Canada, so that's going to heat up the summit. Gladly enough, the Mexican president is not much keen into soccer. He's more a baseball guy. So that mood is going to be light. But no,
Yeah, so
yes.
Juan,
No,
better
no.
you than me to bring that up. So I
Yeah.
thank you for it's a big moment in Canada. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Congratulations, you're building a great team. So yes, the summit comes. I mean, we didn't plan this, and it comes at a very interesting time, right after COP, and the agenda is going to be very very tricky. And we saw some of the statements by the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. Definitely, one of the issues that I was planning to talk about, and I will talk about, is supply chain relocation in the North America, which is a big opportunity for the region. Second, labor issues related to USMCA, which are very likely to come along. And third, and the most challenging, and I would like to begin our overview of Mexico with the challenging part, is the energy sector. The Mexican president, and I will give a little bit more background into this, introduce a constitutional reform to modify the electric market production and commercialization in Mexico, and that will inhibit private investment. And that is something that will definitely come on, because the U.S. has had a lot of pressure, both from um, uh, Democrats and Republicans on both houses, in terms of the American investments, and I'm sure Canadian investments will be as well very, very much in pressure. But just going a little bit back, Mexico had a regime change, and it wasn't just an election; it was a regime change in 2018 with a president that had competed two times and didn't make it until the third one, and he won with an overwhelming majority in 2018. He had control of both houses, the Chamber of Deputies and the Senate, and his majority brought him enough muscle to approve different or build different agendas. I would say his main objective and his main message is about inclusion, which is something most of us in Mexico definitely agree on. And the only challenge there is that some of this inclusion and will come or wants to come from expanding social programs, which is also something that most of us in Mexico will agree that is something that is very useful for the country, as a term of, like Nicola was mentioning, in terms of equalizing our economies our social our population. However, some of these preconceived notions of the administration date back to understanding the world especially around energy in the 70s and 80s. And this electric reform aims to bring that control and authority to the state-owned company, which is CFE, and that is a big challenge. And because the government sees this as a part or a right for the government to own that sector, and that might even generate revenue to fund programs. It's an idea of how the state will work or should work. And that's very, very challenging for this administration, just to accommodate in a region that is thinking completely different, right? Canada and the US. And I would like to hear more from you on this. But the world, or at least North America, is going in a different direction, and that's a big challenge for the Biden administration. Conversely, the Trump administration had a very good relation with the Mexican president, and it's been a challenge for Biden administration, with so many issues that the U.S. the new administration has in the U.S. To deal with Mexico. However, one of the big opportunities comes along regional wise in terms of North America, has to do with manufacturing, right? So COVID brought a set of challenges and questions to where the supply chains must reside, and Mexico has been very attractive for a long time, since the NAFTA came along almost 2 decades ago, and now with the USMCA, and we see that as a big opportunity for the country. And right now, you're probably very familiar with all the concepts that have been going around manufacturing, the ally shoring, the near shoring, and Mexico fits perfectly into that with the U.S. and Canada region, which is the U.S. as a huge market for this. And there's also a lot of big integration, right? So the amount of times auto parts or aerospace manufacture piece crosses the border, it's incredible, just between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. So that's a big opportunity there. And that's probably very much in the news, and very much in the discussions. And Mexico's attractiveness for investment there, it's very high right now, especially in the northern region and the Bajío region. Secondly, I would say this is not very much talk about, especially or maybe only if you're in the tech sector. But tech and venture capital funding in the Americas is booming, and this is a regional thing. And I will talk about Latin America, and I'll give you just a few numbers to understand the growth. In 2011, Latin America had 143 million in funding from venture capital. Just this year, mid-year this year, it was over 12 billion. So that's more of a tenfold in less than out of that. In Mexico has captured 3 billion of that funding, which is more than it had captured in the 10 years before that. So Mexico, and one of the things that is very important, actually, one in three billion that has been funded in Mexico has gone to fintech. And Mexico, similar to what is happening in Latin America, have a big opportunity around fintech. In Mexico, for example, just almost one in three adults have a bank account, and less than one in three have received or made digital payment, which makes the opportunity huge. And you cross that with Mexico having one of the largest markets for remittances in the country. There's a big opportunity there. A lot of remittances are going into more tech-enabled environments, and that has changed the game. And there's a big opportunity around fintech in the country. Similarly, Mexico has, out of this fundings that I was talking about, Mexico has created this year 5 unicorns. The first ones in the tech category. Four out of five are in the fintech sector. So there's a big opportunity there. But not only in fintech, we've seen a rise in the entrepreneurship and a very talented pool of engineers and software engineers in the country. And what we've seen is a trend where Mexicans that are used to go and work for technology companies in the US are coming as founders in Mexico and trying to solve problems that are structural for the economy, and then trying to replicate that in Latin America. And that's something that we can see Brazilian startups or Colombian startups coming into the country, or Mexican startups trying to go into Brazil and Colombia. And finally, which will be a third opportunity, is international companies, not necessarily um, startups, but more established companies seeing the potential in the Mexican market. We have a very young population. We have a high penetration of mobile users, over 90 million mobile users in a population of 130 million. So mobile penetration is huge. So just to circle a little bit back, although there are many challenges with this administration, um, and just forgot to mention this, but the constitutional reform it is presented by the president is very unlikely to get approved because it requires a two-thirds majority in both houses of the federal Congress, which he might not get only if he convinces the opposition, which seems unlikely. However, the narrative is there, and that has been challenging for the region in terms of renewables uh, around the electric market. Outside of that, I would say that was only the yellow sign in terms of attractiveness for investments in Mexico. I would say the other lights are green, big market, big opportunities, very close, connected to the US, connected to the world, talented pool of population.
Oh, yep. I
Hello.
think we seem to have lost Juan, so I'm going to assume that he'll pop right back. I think he was wrapping up
I will
anyway. So,
also.
Keenan, maybe we could just turn to you and you could pick up on the Leader Summit and then give us a quick overview of what's happening in the United States.
Yes, thank you, Velma. It was certainly fortuitous timing for the Leader Summit and our convening today. And I think I'll get to a lot of the topics, what be it energy growth, um, our shared interest in addressing the climate challenge. But I thought I did pick up on that. It was very nice that we were all together today, and have really enjoyed hearing the briefings before me from my colleagues. But as Velma introduced earlier, I am Keenan Austin Reed. I am with the Alpine Group here in the United States, and good afternoon or good morning to you all. So, as been referenced by some of the speakers before me, the United States has experienced some of its most turbulent times in its history. In just 2021, our Congress has addressed an impeachment of our past president, an insurrection on our Capitol, the installation of a new president, all in the middle of a pandemic, which we're all grappling with. These dynamics have widened the ideology divide among policymakers, making legislating extremely difficult. And these are some of the challenges that we at the Alpine Group help our clients navigate daily. Despite this challenging environment, the Biden administration and Congress have decided to address American competitiveness, climate change, and economic inequality. Just last week, Congress passed a $1 trillion infrastructure package. This has been touted as America's investment in itself with an eye towards bolstering American competitiveness. This bill was the largest infusion of federal investment in infrastructure in more than a decade, and these dollars will improve every facet of the American economy, modernizing our grid, investing in broadband, and pushing innovation. What is now possible in American cities is nothing short of transformational. These cities have been desperate for this type of funding for many years. In addition to passing the infrastructure bill, the Congress has been focused on the passage of the comprehensive Build Back Better Act. It's a critical investment in people central to President Biden's agenda. If the Congress is able to pass it, and just looking at my tweets during this conversation, it appears that the Congress will do it over the weekend. The bill will create an average of 2 million jobs per year over the course of the decade. While the infrastructure did a lot to mitigate climate risk, the Build Back Better Act goes even farther. It is clear that the climate crisis is the existential threat of our time. This legislation prioritizes clean air, clean water for public health, creates good paying jobs, and supports green technologies and protects our national security. Uh, Many of us are really thinking of the COP26 convening, and it's really fresh on our minds, having happened just recently, and the urgency of what we all face. Collectively, the public and private sectors realize the great responsibility and opportunity to meet the moment in addressing the climate crisis. I would say just not too long ago, there were the contingent of folks who cared about climate issues were limited to environmental activists and a few set of dedicated legislators, and now there's not a single client that doesn't have to face or think about how they reduce their carbon footprint. And lastly, but perhaps of greatest importance, is the growing wealth gap in our country. The past 18 months have proved fatal to many businesses at a time when inflation is rising. The distribution of wealth and income in the United States has been widening more or less steadily for several decades, and to a greater extent, more than some advanced countries. While some Americans have returned to work, many have not, especially women. Low wages, pressure to manage families, and care of ailing relatives have paused the return of work for several American women. Lawmakers struggle with the best way to support families, and issues like paid leave and the cost of affordable and comprehensive health care haven't been able to find meaningful support among legislators. If passed, the Build Back Better Act that I discussed earlier would expand the basic promise of free schooling in America for the first time in 100 years, with universal preschool for all 3 and 4 year olds, slash families' child care costs, extend the Biden child tax care credit, and expanding access to affordable home care for older Americans with disabilities. With that hope, hopefully this once in a generation investment can put Americans back to work. The racial and gender wealth disparity gap is stark, is systemic, and it's longstanding. Though no one bill will be a moonshot, we hope that this work will empower and uplift the traditionally marginalized, and we know that this challenge will be with us for the remainder of our lifetimes and generations to come. So with this, I'll close and take any questions. These are just a snippet of issues that we face and help our clients navigate. Thank you.
Thank you, Keenan, and thank you to our audience. I know that's a lot of information, but I think you can understand and see the complexity and the depth of the experience that the people on this webinar have and share, and how deeply tied they are to what's happening in their respective jurisdictions. I'm going to just maybe ask a couple of questions that we can touch on together, and I'll just facilitate the answers. But so it is interesting that we're having this after COP26, when all the leaders were together, and I know that the dynamics around energy and a number of natural resources, really for the first time, we heard about lithium and its role in various economies. We hear about mining and forestry and how carbon credits are going to play out. So I wonder if you could comment on the opportunity side, rather than the differences between our jurisdictions. But coming out of COP26, if you could maybe just say quickly what one or two of the biggest opportunities are for those looking to invest or be involved in your jurisdictions. And Jose, I'm going to go right back to you because you spoke so eloquently about the carbon market and the forestry and agriculture. Like, is that a direct tie to COP26, or what would you add for us?
Thank you. Indeed, it is. It is a direct tie. It's a direct tie to COP26, but it is already something that was in progress in Brazil for, I would say, about 5 years or so. It started in the past. And this is, it started, as a matter of fact, it started in 2015 when Brazil started to organize its views on this subject. And I think that you have several opportunities on food, agriculture, on forest, on transportation, on energy. Brazil is supporting a lot renewables, renewable energy. And as you may know, Brazil has a huge part of its energy coming from hydroelectrics, and now it's using solar energy and wind energy also. And this is part of a movement. I think that Brazil has changed a lot. And if you allow me to deviate just for 1 second about this sort of environmental issues, but talk very, very fast about another kind of environment, that it's the legal environment for business in Brazil. When I started working almost 40 years ago, opening and operating a company in Brazil was a nightmare. It was really a nightmare. Still in 2014, the World Bank report doing business said that you needed at least 84 days to open a company in Brazil. Now you can open a company in 48 hours in Brazil. It really has changed a lot. We had a major change in Brazilian labor law in 2017 that simplified a lot the labor relations. We had in the last in 2019 we had a very important law that it's called the law for economic freedom, for simplifying a certain number of procedures. In 2020, we had several laws on digital issues, and now you can do almost everything with a token and or a cell phone. You have, for example, you don't need any longer to have your directors and your managers domiciled in Brazil. For example, if you run a Brazilian company, that ended with this nightmare of holding the visas for foreign investors in Brazil. We had recently, a couple of weeks ago, a huge privatization of airports. We have now been approved a law on privatization of the Federal Electric Power Company. We have a new law on basic sanitation and sewage, and reaching out for Juan. We also have a huge fintech activities in Brazil. And we have started last year a new electronic payment system called PIX that now has 105 million individuals that use PIX in October 21. 112 million legal entities use PIX, and you had 1.11 billion transactions in October 2021. And this comes from November 2020, when you had 33 million. So, as a matter of fact, there is, in the last, I would say, in the last 5 years or so, or a little bit more, you have effectively a huge change in the Brazilian business environment. And I think that it joins with the COP26 and the idea that you can do business in the environmental sector in Brazil, and you can do it well and you can do it easily. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that's an example of how much things have changed, and I think for a lot in a lot of our jurisdictions, COVID really accelerated change around a number of things. And
Sure.
Juan, you talked about that in terms of supply chains. So who'd like to go next?
If I may,
Yes, please,
uh,
Miguel, please.
I just want to mention that COP26, I think that will not have a high impact in Argentina, that government will prioritize economic development over environmental interests. And this means that the process of the renewal in the energetic matrix will be slower. We will still focus and prioritize oil and gas, Vaca Muerta's basin, and that renewable energies will come slower uh, as as a as a public policy frame.
Thank you, Juan. Oh, I think you might be on mute, Juan. We can't hear you.
That's a classic from the pandemic.
Yes, we're all going to get paperweights that say you're on
Yeah,
mute.
so I would say Mexico's position was requesting more finance from developers to developing countries, and just saying that different impact, obviously, and Mexican delegation China contributed to the associations for Mexico from Brazil and Latin America percent of the world's emissions. They say that Mexico to adopt a more aggressive approach in financing from developed countries, which, and like I mentioned before, changing this with the Mexican electric reform, it's a very challenging
Right.
time. However, I do believe whatever pressure may come from North America will be helpful.
Right. I mean, one thing that's true about COP26 is that it's where implementation rubber hits the road from there, and so some difficult conversations are going to happen at every national level, and then regionally and internationally. I wonder because I know we're running out of time and we've covered a lot, but I mean, I think one of the things that I'd like to talk about here is that. Um, we all work independently, and you can see the depth of knowledge of everyone on this call in their own jurisdiction. But the value of working with the FIPRA network is that you're able to work across a number of independent providers in a number of jurisdictions. I'm in the Netherlands today. I'm still in the EU. The FIPRA network was conceived in the EU, where you knew that you could get people who really understood the details on issues across a number of jurisdictions when you were trying to enter a region. So maybe you could, each of you could speak to what you think the value is that we're connected in a network and able to add our cumulative value for clients and in conversations. I mean, everyone can see here the differences in our jurisdictions, in the timing of our politics, in some of the dynamics on the ground, and the economic post-pandemic priorities. Having said that, there are many companies that are interested in coming into Latin America, into North America, and doing so seamlessly and together. So maybe we could just do a quick round the circle, and Keenan, I'll let you start. Thank you.
Yeah, that was an easy one, Velma, because the FIPRA network adds value to absolutely every client. Um, there's no there's no client that doesn't want to play if they don't publicly play on the global stage. And our network allows us to get just in this short hour, you've seen that we can get a quick pulse on any part of the globe. And so for the folks that we service, they have been able to take advantage of that immediate value and appreciate the interconnectivity. So that thank you for that question. Clients, our network certainly appreciates it.
Yes. Who would like to go next? Nicola, would you like to jump in here?
Yes, also because I started as a client in FIPRA, so I knew
Oh,
FIPRA from the
interesting.
outside. And what I liked of FIPRA, it was not just the geographical spread, because many consultancy networks have it, but is the quality standard around the spread that it's uncommon. So you can find very quality people everywhere in the over 60 countries that we're present. And the second is the level of independent advice. Independent advising means that consultants usually tends to please the client and just say yes, we can do it. And in FIPRA, many times when I was outside, but also now that I work within, I found many no's when things don't make sense. So sometimes they are showstoppers. We even, commercially speaking, we suicide. But if they don't make sense, it's better to advise the client before rather than after when you fail. So that was an incredible difference with respect of many other firms that are of the size of FIPRA. So that's why this kept me in honeymoon year, despite it's over 10 years I'm working with them.
Yeah, so that's very interesting that you started as a client. I think you've heard that everyone on this call is either a founder or plays a senior leadership role in their company, and I think that also you're looking at a group of people who are deeply committed to the public policy and politics in their own jurisdictions. So I know that that adds value for sure. Um, I wonder Jose Gabriel, I wonder if you would maybe just speak quickly as we close to the example of Uber and coming in across multiple jurisdictions.
Yeah, I think that Uber is one of the examples of the FIPRA network capacity and ability to and availability to help a company that goes global and that goes with a new product that is unknown and that needs to have a strong connection with the political and the public affairs side, and from the legal side, regulatory, public affairs, etc. And I think it was quite interesting because FIPRA was able to work with Uber and help Uber in many countries where FIPRA had units. And it was a quite interesting experience because it was not only from the Brazilian perspective or from any other country perspective, it was not only an issue about a foreign investor coming to the country, but it was a foreign and new business coming to the country. And I think that's what made FIPRA strength there was the fact that all the units could communicate, could inform, could transmit the reaction, so you could anticipate the moves that would happen 1 month later or 2 months later or 3 months later. We could always share this experience, and that added a value to the service that was provided, because it was, although as everyone knows, public affairs is a local practice. I think that's one of the great charms and advantage of FIPRA is the fact that it's a global network of local experts. So you can add the local knowledge and let's say it's a kind of a military expression that I don't like a lot. It's boots on the ground, but you can add that in several countries, and you can add that all that experience in every place where FIPRA as a unit and FIPRA network exists, and you can exchange and listen. What is the difficulties you found in your jurisdiction? What worked better in your jurisdiction? So this is something that it's quite relevant, and I think that helps to provide a service level, an adequate and high service level of service. Sorry.
Great, thank you. So I want to thank our viewers for sticking with us through this conversation. I think you've had an in-depth briefing across 5 very complex jurisdictions, and we do appreciate your tuning in. I think you know how to find each of us in our own offices, so we would welcome a further conversation and any of your direct questions. And so with that, I'd like to say thank you to Jose, Gabriel, to Miguel, to Nicola, to Juan, and to Keenan for the discussion today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.